Gamers, apes, purveyors of potassium, it is time to fulfill your civic duty and vote for Donkey Kong Bonanza as Game of the Year at the Game Awards. Make Monke proud.
I mean, if you like DK anyway.
The Game Awards. Old Jeff Keighley has been trying to make his own version of the Oscars or the Grammys, and I salute him for the effort. Games are an artistic medium unto themselves and are worthy of respect. They make nose-bleeding sums of money that movie executives could only dream of, and they bundle in so much of every other form of media that it's no wonder it's become such a mainstream thing.
I remember being one of those dorks in middle school for liking video games a lot, only to grow up and find out that all of you guys kept playing Pokemon and watching Dragon Ball Z too. I see you guys.
Speaking of middle school, I remember Jeff Keighley in the days of G4 X-Play and all that. It was a strange time. There was an Axe spray smelling, got-to-be-glued aesthetic to all these gamer shows. Music and movies had a ton of time to mature into something that everyone could take seriously, but games were often still viewed as silly toys in those days by a sizable chunk of the pop culture populace. This is the world Keighley dealt in, and he's come back with a vengeance to make another E3, and also another E3, but it's in the winter this time. They hand out some awards too if you squint real hard and listen.
I remember being really excited about the Game Awards when I started paying attention in 2017, but after 2018 I just couldn't sit through them anymore.
I love the thought, but somewhere along the line they figured out they aren't going to make as much money if they didn't cram Doritos ads and game trailers into every crevice of the show. I remember being passionate about Fire Emblem Three Houses getting a nomination, and they just quickly rattled it off in between ad segments.
All right. For Best Strategy Game, focused on real-time or turn-based strategy, those nominees are Age of Wonders Planetfall, Anno 1800, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Total War Three Kingdoms, Tropico 6, and Wargroove. And the Game Award in that category goes to Fire Emblem Three Houses. All right.
Somehow Jeff turned the awards into a means to get people to watch just to see a bunch of ads for 3 hours. I won't go too hard on it as I imagine it takes a truckload of money to run the event, but what I'm getting at here is we shouldn't take this particular show too seriously.
I haven't watched it since then, but just from the nominations you can already see the cracks from the whole awards element of the show.
For video game adaptions, they sort of forgot to put Sonic 3 in there, even though it's the only video game movie released recently with a universal positive reception from critics and audiences. The problem is that it came out right after last year's cutoff and they just sort of forgot it was eligible for this year's show.
Either that or they made a deal with Jack Black to do Lava Chicken at the show. That's kind of the main uncomfortable thing undergirding the awards aspect. There's so many brand deals injected right into the show that you can't ever really be sure that there isn't some sort of financial element to the nominations because of it.
Check out the Game Music Awards this year. I'm sure all these soundtracks are fantastic, but you might notice a few juggernauts missing, namely Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. Both of these games had new tracks and brilliant reorchestrations of legendary classics, only to be totally passed up because they're not on Spotify. You can't level up on Spotify if there's no Nintendo music on there.
You, my friend, haven't even thought about buying Spotify Premium.
Want a break from the ads?
When there's a crossroads with integrity on one side and the bag on the other, Jeff is chasing that bag like Rick's Special in Kirby Air Riders.
There's a chance they're doing some cute little collab that's mutually beneficial, but I'm gonna guess there was a fat price tag attached to that leveled up by Spotify tagline, as there is for other ads in world reviews.
I like watching new game trailers as much as the next guy, but let's just give it up. Call it E3 Winter or something. Why even bury an award show inside of this giant Nintendo Direct?
I guess what I'm trying to say is
Cut the check, Nintendo.
regardless of what I think of the show, it has established itself as a big stage for honoring the work of game devs. So while it can be very cringe like 80% of the time, it's also super important to the gaming culture at large.
This will also be the first time since 2018 that I will commit to watching at least 20 minutes of it, because our boy is nominated for the Chug Jug Victory Royale Game of the Year Award, leveled up by Doritos Locos Tacos. This is yet another chance for the DK franchise to shine on the world stage. Regardless of whether it wins or not, Nintendo's gonna throw a little button on the game in the eShop labeling it as a Distinguished Game Awards nominee. That's pretty neat, and if you saw my video breaking down the success of Bonanza so far, you know the formula. The better this game does, the more Donkey Kong stuff we get in the future.
That's why I'd love for it to win. But will it? Most people are thinking it will get passed up, and I would be inclined to agree.
Donkey Kong is not really the type of game that gets a lot of glaze at the Game Awards. Just look at the award categories. There are the genre ones that the show clearly doesn't care about. The ones they do care about feel like they're ripped right out of the Oscars.
Look, look, I might catch some flack for this, but do the Game Awards really need to put acting at the centerpiece of this whole shebang?
It doesn't make a ton of sense with the workflow of mocap. Charlie Cox is nominated for the Best Performance category, but even he would tell you the credit should go to the mocap actor Maxence Carzola. I'm sorry, man.
I'm sure Charlie gives a great voiceover, but video games don't work like Hollywood.
There's even an argument to be made in Hollywood that they should pay homage to the stunt actors who literally give their limbs to the projects they're in, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Charlie being here is part of what the Game Awards and most of the big AAA game industry want to present themselves as. They want to be movies.
Having famous actors there validates this idea that video games are really serious, Mom. Look, we have actors, just like movies. You know movies, right?
Here's the host of ESPN's First Take and the new ESPN Plus show, Stephen A's World, Stephen A. Smith.
Did they just bring Stephen A. Smith to the Game Awards in an effort to legitimize esports as something equal to athletic sports?
Was it Mewtwo? Who you taking in a 1 versus 1? Goku or Vegeta? In terms of who I'm taking? Goku or Vegeta?
I love a good story, but is narrative really the centerpiece of game design? Could we not have a gameplay award or an innovative mechanic award, a level design award, best UI, boss design, puzzles, combat?
A lot of games start their life as gray boxes, but all of the most prestigious awards are secondary to that actual gameplay experience.
I don't have a ton of time to play games, so I miss a lot of these pop culture ones, and often I don't feel like I need to play them because the first 15 things I hear are interesting about the game have nothing to do with how it plays.
I remember seeing a God of War video where everyone was drooling over the fact that there's no camera cuts in the game, and like, that's neat, but what is this, Birdman? Or look at the recent Wolverine reveal where they spent a whole trailer showcasing 8 seconds of gameplay buried in a bunch of cutscenes. 8 seconds of gameplay in the gameplay trailer.
To be clear, I'm not saying any of these games are bad. It's just strange to me how gameplay has taken a backseat in the last decade.
I imagine if these story-first games were boring, they wouldn't be nominated in the first place, but it shows what parts of the video game the awards feel are the most important. We have best game direction, best narrative, best art, best audio, best sound, and best acting. My more astute gamers in the audience will know that you can experience all of these categories without even playing the game.
Am I supposed to play Expedition 33 or should I just watch the cutscenes on YouTube? Am I supposed to strap on my gamer headset and level up on Spotify to listen to the score?
I don't have any problem with narrative-focused games, but can we stop making the centerpiece of the gaming medium an imitation of Hollywood? I think it does a disservice to the actual gameplay achievements of the games themselves. Like, I couldn't care less about 33 until I saw a battle play out, and then I thought, hey, I might need to check that out. That looks pretty fun to play. You know, like a video game.
I don't think you need to throw out these awards either. It's incredible what studios do with a combination of voice talent, mocap, and artistic vision. It's all great, I just feel like it's gobbling up the game part of games, at least at this award show.
Anyway, 2025 was a pretty stacked year. The Game of Legends Silksong finally came out with another indie banger in Hades 2. I really enjoyed Silksong, but I took a break, got lost, and now I don't know where to go. I'll get back to it someday. I haven't tried Hades yet, but I know Supergiant's pedigree from playing Transistor back in the day. I'm not at all familiar with Death Stranding or Kingdom Come, but the real game to watch out for this year seems to be Expedition 33. Its French-flavored blend of Final Fantasy, Mario RPG, and Persona 5 seem to have captivated the modern game industry. I'll have to try it for myself at some point. The active battle system has me intrigued. I would agree that this seems to be the favorite to scoop a ton of awards. It's one of those feel-good stories where a smaller team breaks off from a megacorp to make something that shakes up the norm. An idea that likely would not have been greenlit at Ubisoft turns into a big commercial hit. It's a good tale. Maybe a little too good, though.
Expedition has developed a mythology that has taken it from really good game to this industry-defining moment. Something that will be taught in universities for a millennia.
Like, people have been running with this narrative that the game was made by around 33 people, which is the amount of full-time employees there at Sandfall Interactive, but doesn't account for the other hundreds of people that worked on the game. The credits of the game suggest that all gameplay animation was outsourced to South Korea, for instance, with Sandfall handling all the cinematic animation in-house. They had over 30 contractors just for the soundtrack of the game, not to mention the dozens and dozens needed for dubbing, dialogue, localization, and so on. They ended up with a team of over 400 people that worked on the game, a similar team size to Donkey Kong Bonanza. Their budget was in the tens of millions, supported by a publishing partner that has had their own multiple rounds of funding. One of these rounds of funding included a crisp $120 million check from NetEase, you know, that small indie Chinese startup with a market cap of $92 billion. Also, the CEO's dad was a founding member of a venture capital firm that's been doing business since 2002. Brosh didn't start a game studio out of a garage or a basement akin to the stories of games like Hollow Knight. This has literally zero business business being in the independent category, but people have sort of latched on to this whole indie narrative. Suddenly it's starting to make sense how they can afford the guy who's reportedly getting paid 350,000 big ones per episode on Daredevil.
Let's not get lost in the sauce here. I'm not saying this makes Expedition 33 bad or that their work is less valuable because it was well funded. I'm just saying that this is 1000% not an indie game made by 30 people. It had a similar team size to Donkey Kong Bonanza. I'm a-okay with 33 sweeping the show as long as we talk about it in the realm of truth and reality. And I feel like people's perspective of this game is sort of inflated by this mythology of it being made by 30 people in some little basement garage somewhere by the sweat and blood of their brow, and it was just like, it was a pretty well-funded AA game.
Side note, why am I, someone who found out about this game 2 weeks ago, more aware of how this was made than the Game Awards? Jeff, did you not Google Kepler Interactive? Is it still an indie if there's a publisher funding the development and then distributing the game? Isn't that the literal definition of the traditional model of publishing video games? It's funny because I'm not trying to take anything away from the success of the game. It's just, we gotta recontextualize it in, reality. By the looks of it, we're about to enter a golden age of AA games, and Kepler Interactive has a really cool publishing model that elevates bigger ideas like this without the binding sorts of agreements you would get at Ubisoft. Silksong also has this strong narrative surrounding it, an actual indie game with its own 6-year dev cycle. The agonizing wait finally came to an end this year, and it seems it was worth it. This game also has a bit of a weird mythology around how it was made. Like, guys, they put the credits in the game. It was made by more than 3 people. It's still an impressive small and mighty team, but let's not rob almost 100 people of their shared moment. Anyway, I think the issue with Silksong winning would be the difficulty of the game, and that's not coming from me. Bloomberg interviewed Ari Wilson and William Pellin, and they think that not only is Expedition 33 exceptional in its execution, but it's also broadly palatable. Meanwhile, Silksong can be so difficult that it alienates a chunk of the audience. They weren't even planning on attending the Game Awards at the time of their interview, which probably hurts their chances the most. I'm not saying they would rig the votes or anything, but it would be somewhat embarrassing for the event if Game of the Year didn't think the show was important enough to attend in person.
Those are the two frontrunners. You may have noticed I talked a lot about narratives around the games rather than the quality of the games themselves. Welcome to award shows.
Every other game on the list is obviously a contender, and I should mention that Jeff is deeply involved in the meta-narrative of Kojima Productions, so I could see that carrying Death Stranding to the top. I didn't mention it as a frontrunner because I would have expected the first game to sweep harder if that whole Jeff relationship was as strong as you might think it would be.
So while I wouldn't count on DK winning, there is a chance that it could pull through, so let's talk about that.
Somehow Astrobot won last year, showing that while the Game Awards certainly has a preference for that Rockstar first-party PlayStation type of game, somehow a third-person platformer pulled through. Did Sony cut the check? So on one hand, games like Donkey Kong Bonanza can win, and on another, DK has its own meta-narrative. If you think 6 years was a long wait for Silksong, try a decade plus for Donkey Kong to make his return after Tropical Freeze. It was such a long wait, the Game Awards still didn't exist yet. They were still doing whatever this was on Spike TV.
Now, Reggie, let's get something out of the way. You're looking a little cranky. Did something maybe leak earlier in the week?
What an uncomfortable and strange way to find out Cranky Kong was in the game.
Donkey Kong was not only a legacy character, but he is one of the legacy characters. We know how the Game Awards loves cutscenes and a narrative. You want to know what franchise put that whole concept into the industry? The franchise is over 40 years old and it's still found a way to reinvent itself. You know Bonanza. The movement is crisp. The whole world is your oyster, ready to be molded in any way you see fit. You can skateboard on boulders, turn into an ostrich, discover countless little goodies on your quest to the center of the earth. While this game never puts cinematics over gameplay, it is one of Nintendo's premier showcases of scale and camera work, up there with the slick parts of games like Galaxy. The finale is a tense build-up that morphs into a literal and figurative roller coaster ride as you race across crocodile and a cape to the planet core to claim the banana seraphim. It's absurd, it's funny, but it clearly has heart and soul too. No one's dying in this game to give it that sense of gravitas that you might find in a more mature title, but the plot is an endearing one, befitting of the target demographic. Pauline is as we all once were, curious of our potential, but too unsure to grasp it. We look to the obstacles that we overcame and the strength of our comrades to claim the dreams we want to see become a reality. I've known grown men to shed a little tear at the finale, because we've all been that little kid once. Or we see our own kids' experience in Pauline's. It's a simple story. The delivery is certainly not on par with the legitimate Hollywood production of something like Death Stranding, but it totally works. Most important for my taste, they do it in a complimentary way that respects your time. You can make a straight line for the main objectives and roll the credits in like 6 hours. Don't want to collect bananas? That's chill. You don't need any of them to beat the game. Want to skip a layer? Go for it. The game was designed to be sequence broken. Want to get freaky on Emerald Rush? I'm not sure where it would land on my list of favorite games ever. I think I need a little more time to pass, and maybe a few more playthroughs to determine that. But I do think it's worthy of this award. Is it better than the other games on the list? Yes or no. It depends on which parts of a video game you value the most. It has the 4th highest Metacritic score this year, tied with Split Fiction, but let's not try and compare a banana and an apple and say which one is better. These games hit a very wide variety of taste and preference, making the Game of the Year award more of a vibes and popularity contest than one of sheer quality.
These titles are all great. They all deserve to win, but I hope DK takes it personally. I might be a little biased. Regardless, there is more than a 0% chance that we'll see a live orchestra do the Bananza of Apes part of the Heart of Gold song, and I'm all here for that if they do it, you know. Bananza, Bananza, you know what I'm saying?